Okay, thanks very much. Okay, I'd just like to talk about the topic informational aesthetics and the digital exploration of Renaissance art. I gave a similar paper 2 years ago in San Francisco, more to do with the philosophical aspects of informational aesthetics and the history thereof. This time I want to look at some of the developments in the world of evidence-based art. It's often these days it's called art science, combining the term, if you like, an evidence-based scientific approach to art. And there have been some wonderful emergent developments in recent times in high-powered radiographic and photographic technologies for the examination of artworks. Famously, Pascal Cotte in Paris has used LAM or multispectral technology to restore the Mona Lisa digitally without having to touch the painting in very high-powered lenses to be able to examine the different layers of that work. And that's been quite extraordinary, what he's discovered. And an Italian guy called Maurizio Serracini has examined Leonardo's Adoration of the Magi, famously in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. And he's discovered an underdrawing behind the painting, which he's being able to recover digitally, and we can examine a lot of detail that wasn't visible before. And there are many attempts around the world to use what we call mega photography or macro photography, high-end technology to examine famous paintings and masterpieces, such as the Ghent altarpiece in Ghent, which the University of Antwerp and the National Gallery of America have explored. You can find all this on the internet, just Google some of these terms. It's fascinating what they're finding there in the different layers of the Ghent altarpiece using macro X-ray fluorescence imaging of that. So that's what is somewhat intriguing. It's a new development in the history and the scholarship of art. So when we say mega photography, that is itself another discipline within informational aesthetics. Since Roland Barthes' famous publication of the La Chambre Claire or Camera Lucida, he explored the spectrum of the beholder's share of the viewer of photographs. And Willem Flusser, who was a philosopher of communication, wrote towards the philosophy of photography, which examined the apparatus, as he called it, of the black box and its role in digital society. And there have been several contributors in this field, and I've listed some of my references there. You can follow that up. The famous Hans Belting, a German art historian scholar, who was one of the pioneers of what's called the iconic turn in art history. And he's explored particularly faces in Renaissance art and across in general, the iconic image as distinct from the artwork. And he's of the belief that art history is somehow at the end of its career with the rise of the digital world. So we've seen growth in digital aesthetics, metaphotography, and so forth to help provide a framework for understanding a world which faces a constant avalanche, actually, of photographs. We all do, cinematic messages delivered by the media. We're just inundated with images, and how that's part of the information world we live in, and how we interpret those images is a science in a way. It's something we have to deal with. So I see informational aesthetics as one of the developing disciplines within the history of philosophy of information, just as we saw the developments of informational ethics that developed also out of the beginnings of philosophy of information. And I think informational aesthetics is going to be a new chapter, hopefully, in our discipline. On another level, personally, I've been involved with the recent emergence of radiographic technologies in the exploration of works of Renaissance artists, particularly Raphael and Leonardo. If you follow me on ResearchGate, John Douglas Holgate, you'll find all the work and the projects I'm involved in that particular field, growing from my interest in painting of Raphael, and particularly the School of Athens. But in the last 2 years, I've developed a detailed evidence-based protocol, LISA, I've called it, or the Leonardo Iconographic Scale of Authentication, based on macro photographic analysis of his extant paintings and drawings over a 2-year period. So I've examined those carefully. I've used infrared photography and X-ray photography to examine copies and obtain the best copies I can of all his work. And then I've expanded on a large 65-inch television screen and examined the patterns within it and the iconography, the images, and so forth. Much has not really been identified very closely. They reveal the presence of hidden dates on his work, recurring monogram, and a camouflage autograph, which appears on every work that I've seen, including all his drawings. So if it's verified over time by the art community, these features will help art historians and scholars to better place Leonardo's work in their biographical and historical context. They'd offer us a chronological guide through his magnificent landscapes and personages in his particular world. So the examples are, if anybody has seen the magnificent Adoration of the Virgin in Adoration of the Magi, I'm sorry, in the Uffizi Gallery, one sees it from a distance. As we have over the centuries, we haven't been able to look at these works close up. But this is an image that can be expanded many times and looked at for the detail behind it. Now, what people haven't seen probably is this particular image is an image of the poet Dante Alighieri, which emerges on the right-hand side of the painting with the figures who are there in adoration of the Virgin. Now, there's a figure, we assume it's Virgil, just behind him, but has features of a young Leonardo, if you can see those. And to the right, there is another young man, like a soldier, who's looking off the painting, and he's often said to be an image of Leonardo also. But when one goes further into the image and examines it, a lot more detail appears as well, including, which one may not be able to see clearly here, but certainly on a big screen it's visible. You can see the date 1/4/8 and then the 1482. So that is interesting because the painting is normally dated around about 1481. So if the date, and the date occurs more than one time, several times on this painting. So one might be able to see if Leonardo has left those autographic features in his works deliberately, it gives a great opportunity to revise the estimate datings. And not only that, but also lead to possible identifications of work that has been ignored over the last 500 years. So it's quite a significant development. This is the giant hands, which are seen at the back of the right-hand side of the Mona Lisa. There's a hand which contains a bird, and there are many of these images which are appearing in his work, which recur. So in other examples, in the eye of the Mona Lisa, for example, there is a beauty spot or a mole to the right side of her eye, and these images can be expanded. One of the interesting features of his iconography is the use of a V-shaped monogram with the heads of two lions. Now that appears regularly in his work as a signature, as a monogram. All this will no doubt be debated, but this is just one aspect of the process. The similar V shape you can see here is with the lion heads is on the cheek of the Madonna of the Carnation, one of his early works. And very often it appears in similar spots throughout each work. This is the famous Salvador Mundi, controversial Salvador Mundi, which sold for, I think, $450,000 a couple of years ago. When one highlights the forehead, and in many cases the forehead is a place for his camouflage date. The date 1489 can be seen under high resolution across the forehead. So that needs to be corroborated, of course, by experts, but this seems to be a constant pattern. That's not the date which art historians give this painting, which is interesting. But if it is an actual, the date can be corroborated, then that would mean the evidence is strong that this is by Leonardo himself, which of course is much debated in the art world even today. Now, this is finally, this is a different look at the Mona Lisa. Now, once again, the date here, which is after many analyses and many different shots, is the date is 1498. Now, that's not the date which is attributed to the Mona Lisa. The painting of the Mona Lisa is normally attributed to 1503. So if in fact Mona Lisa was painted in 1498, this cannot be Lisa Gherardini, because she was in Florence and she would have been too young for this portrait. This is a big debate in the art world over many years, whether Leonardo finished this painting in Milan or in Florence. But if it was dated, and this is a common place for his camouflage dates, 1498, then we need to revise a lot of our thinking about the Mona Lisa. But interestingly, if one looks very carefully above the eye, there's another date there, which is 1503. Now, that's the date which, of course, it is attributed to him having begun the painting in 1503. So this is a kind of digital archaeology whereby we can look at these details in much detail. So a lot of these things are happening around the world to famous paintings, and we will see, no doubt, whether they are true or not. And Leonardo famously said about this, he said, there are some people who can see, there's some people who need to be shown to see, and there are others who do not see. And the art world is full of those three characteristics, three types of people. And of course, there are others who imagine they see and others who refuse to see. So that's kind of how the art world works. Now, in conclusion, I'd just like to say the digital aesthetics represents a bold new chapter in the philosophy of information. The exciting investigations and projects in the art world I've outlined here are being matched by the increasing presence of digital art itself as an emerging, as well as there are emerging theoretical, philosophical discussions around the nature and role of photography in society. Information, as Einstein once said about imagination, can take us everywhere, even into the undiscovered corners of Renaissance art. Since the birth of philosophy of information in the 1990s, we have witnessed many fruitful forks in the road, from Floridi's computationalism to Caparo's informational intercultural ethics, and of course to Wu's multifaceted information society or information civilization. So we're now on the edge of merging into new areas, I believe. So my summary of the fledgling study of informational aesthetics will hopefully open up another pathway for us. I was delighted to find at this conference intriguing presentations which touch on this topic and indicate a desire to look at aesthetics from a refreshingly wider informational perspective. One speaker earlier today referred to the development of multidimensional aesthetic activity as opposed to the digitalization and commercialization of art. Another talked about the need for aesthetic experience in our schools. And the whole fifth session tomorrow actually is dedicated to the topic of information and aesthetics. So that's really encouraging. So I look forward to similar inspiring dialogues in the coming years. And thank you very much for your invitation to participate in this exciting forum. Thank you very much.